wartet ihr jetzt schon auf John Goodman? Ja? Okay.
Okay, another 20 seconds and we stop. Better get a proper seat now. Okay, thank you very much. I'll do it in English, but maybe a question comes. Yes.
Prepare to wait for your return until health is over.
Okay. Darf ich jetzt die Fotografen bitten, sich zu setzen? Please, could you
I would
sit
like
down?
to ask the photographers to please sit down.
Thank you for cooperating. Okay. I'd like now to start the press conference on the film The Big Lebowski. And I would like to introduce our guests here, and I start from this side. I welcome Joel Coen, who is the director and co-scriptwriter of the film. I welcome Ethan Coen, who is also the co-scriptwriter and the producer. And then I welcome John Goodman, who played Walter Sobchak. First question goes to the gentleman. If you could please stand up so we see you when you ask your question. Thank you very much.
I thought the casting of your film was great, and I was wondering that as you were writing the script for the film, did you have specific actors in mind? And once you went into production of the film, were you able to get the actors that you wanted? And how important is getting the actors that you want? Do you work around other actors' working schedules to get the people that you want?
Yeah, well, in this case, we always write some parts for specific actors and some parts for, not knowing who's going to play the part. And in this case, we wrote the part that John plays specifically for him. And we wrote the part that, let me see, John Turturro, John Polito, all the Johns, basically. Those parts were written specifically for them. The part that Jeff Bridges played was not specifically written for him, although after an earlier draft of the script, we sent him a copy of the script and, asked him if he would play the part. So, in terms of whether or not it is a question, when we do that, we do have to sort of work around the respective actors' schedules.
Okay, with your... Sorry, I miss out here. Is there a room part two? You fit? Okay. All right. There's another question here on the left-hand side. Can you please stand up? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the film. It was fantastic. I have a question about the nihilists. Why are they Germans?
John, you want to take that one?
Aren't all? I don't know where the movement itself started. Having not written it myself, I only had to fight them, ma'am. I don't know where they come from, but where there's a nihilist, I'll be there.
We made them Germans because each of the characters has a sort of musical signature genre, whatever. They're sort of conceived as techno-pop, sort of 80s, throwbacks to that era and that genre, and that sort of seemed to suggest that they might be Germans.
Okay, that's another question here.
Hi, my first question goes to the two Coen brothers. Could you comment how do you conceive a project together? Who writes it? Who starts the idea? And how do you direct it? And my second question is to John. What was your relation with the brothers during the film? Thanks.
Well, we write together and actually continue pretty much the whole thing working on the set together. There's no real division of labor. It's pretty loose in terms of what each of us does, and pretty collegial. I wouldn't really know how to describe what one of us does as opposed to the other. It's just very much a collaboration. We started writing the script at the beginning with this first scene and sort of bat it back and forth, talk through the script, and actually the rest of making the movie is pretty much just an extension of that.
Since they won't let me write anymore after the first two films we've done together, I pretty much do what they tell me. I don't get in the way, nobody gets hurt.
Further questions? In the middle here.
Hi. In Fargo, you had a painter, and here you have a woman painter. Very different painters, but it seems like he can get kicks out of the art scene somehow. What's your relationship? I mean, could you explain something about the use? You often see studios and films, and mostly it's really, really stupid, and you don't really go much into the studio. You only take a minute, but that's nice. And if you could say something about your use of art in the movies.
Well, it's interesting because painting pictures of wildlife for postage stamps is not really considered part of the art scene in the United States. In this case, the painter that Julianne Moore played was sort of, like the other characters, supposed to be sort of a throwback to an earlier time, and she was loosely based on a painter from the Fluxus movement, who we were acquainted with, who used to paint that way, naked from a sling.
Which was almost the title of the movie, wasn't it?
Sorry, can we have the microphone just for a second? Thank you.
You said you were acquainted with. How come you're not anymore?
Well, no, it was just I mean, we'd heard of her. I don't actually know her. I met her once, but it's it's the Fluxus movement was a movement that was a sort of '60s movement, New York movement. Yoko Ono was associated with it. Actually, it's sort of a combination of painting and performance art.
Okay, there was another question here, middle section.
Yes, this is a question about the dream sequences in the film, and in particular the gutter balls dream sequence. What was the inspiration for those dream sequences? It almost had a Busby Berkeley flavor to it. Was he an inspiration for that particular dream sequence scene?
Yeah, it was. It was definitely supposed to be reminiscent of Busby Berkeley. It's sort of a convention of. The movie was sort of, in our minds, loosely sort of patterned on a Raymond Chandler kind of story, and in those stories, the hero is often, hit in the head or drugged and has some sort of hallucination. And in this case, since it was a pothead being drugged in a pornographer's house, we felt sort of free to do whatever we wanted, really.
Okay, there's a question here on the right-hand side, far end. Thank you.
Yes, after the big success of Fargo, you were worried or not something is changed for you, and in which way you begin this new work?
Not really. I mean, a lot of the sort of media attention of Fargo was happening long after we started this movie. So, no, even if just for that reason. But, no, I must say, even the success of Fargo, such as it was a success on our terms, which are pretty modest. It wasn't like, a huge Hollywood movie. Yeah, I don't know what would have been different if it hadn't been as successful. I suspect very little.
There's another question here, sort of on the right-hand side.
Mr. Goodman, could you please, with a few of your own words, try to describe Walter as a person? Thank you.
It's very hard to describe Walter as a person. He's a man who's obsessed, I think, with his ex-wife and with his experiences in Vietnam. He was defined as a man very early and spent the rest of his life trying to live up to that. And he just likes kicking back, having a few brews, and bowling. His measurements are, I don't know, just a California kind of guy.
Okay. We have a question here, sort of middle section.
Well, Mr. Coen, in your films, all of them are based on the bowling center. And then first, I want to ask your average bowling score. And then, did you find some connection of bowling and their life?
I don't actually bowl. The bowling was just an excuse to, it's one of the few sports you can do when you're just sort of sit around and smoke and drink and engage in inane conversation while you're doing it, which was the sort of principal attraction for us. But as far as our own Ethan bowls a little. I don't bowl.
Actually, John bowls more than either of us, probably. We're just relaying the question down, but I'm not sure what it is at this point.
I have no one to pass to.
Bowling average.
My bowling average? It's in the high double digits.
Okay. We have a question here.
For the very first time, nobody can complain about a lack of emotion in a Coen Brothers film. Especially, I was moved by the ending, which makes use of a song by the late great Townes Van Zandt. Could you comment on the choice of the song and about the emotional aspect, which is not ironic, I think, which is quite true to me, the emotional aspect in your film this time?
The Townes song. Well, it's a cover of a Rolling Stones song, and it had the sort of appropriately sort of funereal feeling. Beyond that, it had the right kind of vintage flavor that we were trying to get with the rest of the track. I don't really know what to say about it beyond that.
Okay, let's have another question then. There's a question on the right-hand side.
I'm over here. A real quick question. I wanted to ask which scene was your most favorite for each of you, and maybe why, or the funnest to make, or the funniest thing in your favorite scenes. Thanks. Great film, by the way.
Well, it was fun. It was fun watching John smash the Corvette, just because. Some things in movies, they're such a, what it looks like is such a technical remove from what it's like on the set, but it was actually just John on the street there smashing a Corvette with a crowbar, which, what's not to like?
Smashing a Corvette is damned hard work, I must say. So I was afraid, with all the foul language I was using in that scene, that I was going to wake the neighbors. We shot all night. And I didn't know that the fellows here bought out the neighbors. So there was nobody home, nobody was around to hear my ranting. For me, it was just pretty much every day checking into the bowling alley at a certain hour, and after it shut down, and we get to take it over. And it was just a pleasure going to work every day.
Okay, there was a question here in the front row, right-hand side.
Another remark on the references to Germany. The name of the Malibu police chief was Cole. Was that a conscious choice, or was that pure coincidence? And second of all, we saw lots of bowling shots with spin. The one from inside the ball was very impressive, yet it didn't have any spin. Impossible to film, or would it have been too confusing?
Yeah, it's interesting, the whole the Malibu police chief being named Cole. I didn't actually notice it until I finally saw a good clean print of the movie. So it was the choice of the costume designer. The other question was about the spinning bowling ball. That was done on, putting the camera on a little rotisserie, sort of a roasting spit, and turning it as it was tracked down the bowling lane.
Okay, we have a question on the left-hand side.
Yes, please, it's to the Coen brothers. I would like to know, well, when I saw you both in the stage receiving an Oscar, I pretty much saw a scene that could be in a Coen Brothers movie. It was so weird. And I would like to know, well, how was it, and for Frances McDormand as well? And first, that question, did you feel that weird in the Oscar? And the second is, what are you working on now? What is your new film?
Yeah, it was weird. It is weird. You get out there and everybody's in tuxedos, applauding and beaming at you, and it's a little, it's like a nightmare. It's very disconcerting. Why is Jodie Foster smiling at me? So yes, it's weird. What was the other question? What are we doing?
Well, we're not sure what we're going to do next, actually. We've been working on a script about a barber in Northern California in the late 40s that wants to go into the dry cleaning business.
They mock you.
We have a question again here on the left-hand side, this lady.
Yes, I've got two questions for both of you, the Coen brothers. The first is, all the films of you I've seen and I've known that I think most of your movies are very specifically talking about a certain town or a certain countryside, as Fargo is in Midwest, for example. And for me, it's the very first time that you don't take so much care of where it is shot from. Of course, we understand that it's in LA, but it could be anywhere else. You are much more involved in interior feelings and what's going on with those fellows. I would like to know why. And the second is regarding John Turturro. I would like to know what is that John Turturro's exhibition made for? Was it a respiration, a breath in the intense scenes, or whatever?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the second part of the question about John Turturro. Was it? You're wondering what?
It looked for me like a break, like a very fancy break, and I think he's gorgeous in that scene, in those two scenes, major scenes. But it looks like a joke.
Yeah, well, maybe it was what we call a Kafka break. We throw one or two in. Something that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the rest of the movie. I think we just have always wanted to see John play an Hispanic pederast. The other part, well, asking about LA, in our minds, the movie really was very much about LA. One of the sort of inspirations for the movie, or what we were sort of consciously thinking of when we wrote it, was, as I mentioned before, was the stories of Raymond Chandler, which are also very specifically set in and to a certain extent about the city of Los Angeles. And it was hard for us to imagine this movie really anywhere besides LA. So you're right in the respect that the location of a movie is important to us, but in this case, the LA aspect of it was also important.
We have a question in the middle section.
Excuse me, this was supposed to be my first question too. What did you say? The LA aspect was important or not so?
Yeah, yes.
That'd be my first question. Why did it exactly have to be LA after New York and after the Midwest? And my second question is, I have the impression that you're moving on into parody really heavily, and at the same time somehow doing musical, which seems okay to me. Now you're well, it's not criticism as such, but you are choosing male losers as as your prime characters, and I just wanted to know, since you did a brilliant movie on a woman in a lead role, I'd like to know if there's a chance with parody to do that on women too, or not. Thank you.
You want us to do a parody about women?
What was the first part?
I'm trying to remember. No, well, yeah, what was the first part?
What was the first part of the question? Why did it have to be LA? Oh, why did it have to be LA? Well, to us, although it might not come through as strongly here, but to us, all the characters were very much kinds of people you'd see in LA. I mean, it did sort of have to be an LA story, just because the characters, again, in our minds, were sort of emblematic of LA, much as the characters in Raymond Chandler's stories, as Joel sort of suggested, are also suggestive of LA. His stories as well could only have taken place in LA. Maybe that's a distinction that doesn't sort of play as well outside of the States, but at any rate, it was in our minds. But I must say, we never thought of it as a parody. I mean, certainly it's a comedy, but we never thought of it as spoofing a genre or commenting on a genre. It's certainly, in a sense, in a genre, but it's more sort of a case of using it or exploiting the conventions as opposed to parodying the conventions. That was never really in our minds.
We have a question in the corner on left-hand side. Really down there.
Can we consider those characters like comic books characters?
Well, No, I mean, again, that isn't the way we looked at them. I mean, you can consider them however you like. I don't think that's necessarily an invalid way of looking at it if that's the way you see it, but it's not the way we approach it. People actually often think that we're influenced by or are fond of comic books, but to tell you the truth, it's not something I'm personally interested in or read a lot of, for instance. So I've always found that a little bit puzzling. There might be some aspect of the sort of style of the movie which seems a little sort of heightened in the sense that in a comic book kind of style. But again, that's not really a conscious attempt to make them comic book in nature or anything like that. So.
Okay, we have a question now here on the middle section here.
Can you explain your fascination with the crime of kidnapping, which seems to surface in a number of your films?
Yeah, it does. But it's funny. It just sort of you notice it, or we notice it in retrospect. They're all pretty different. We made a story where a baby gets kidnapped, but it's because a couple wants a baby. And we made one where kidnapping takes place for ransom, which is again very different. I mean, the context of that story. In fact, in this one, it turns out, well, not wanting to reveal too much. Well, it turns out there's no kidnapping at all. So they certainly work differently in the different stories. I don't know why we've done it three times.
It's really just a sort of convenient plot device or a convenient sort of crime to hang a plot on because it's a sort of ongoing criminal activity. It takes place over a period of time. It's not a discrete event. It throws together sort of disparate groups of people. There's a lot of reasons why it's sort of convenient or easy to hang a plot on it. But beyond that, there's no real obsession or interest in it.
Okay, we have a couple of questions sort of on this right-hand side.
Hi, I would like to know from the three of you here your impressions or experiences of the Berlin Film Festival so far, or if you've come here before.
I've noticed a lot of cameras.
We just got here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I checked into the hotel late last night.
We've seen the inside of 2 hotels so far, so.
They're very neat and very well kept hotels.
The Berlin hotels. Okay. There was another question sort of at that particular end, okay.
I have a question to Mr. Goodman. Over all your fightings with German nihilists, you shouldn't forget that you once played a German in a Coen Brothers movie yourself. And I read that you're sometimes credited at Karl Mund, but I think that's a lie, or isn't it?
It is not a lie. I did some off-camera dialogue for that movie with the clock? For the Hudsucker Proxy, and I asked that my name from the previous film be used. Karl Mundt, he's an American of German descent, as I am, and as are many of my friends.
Okay, there's a question here.
Yeah,
there's a question on the left-hand side.
It's rare to see a film set so recently in the past. I wonder if you could talk about why you set the film on the eve of the Gulf War and how you think it'll play now on the eve of Gulf War II.
Well, it was mostly because of John's character. You know, it just seemed like an appropriate thing as a sort of paramilitary gun enthusiast and Vietnam vet for him to pontificate about. So that was the main reason.
And you know, as for the current thing, it's who knew?
Okay, there were a couple of questions here on the left and middle section here.
Mr. Goodman, maybe you don't know, but you are the most watched actor, American actor here in Germany. Every day we can admire you in Rosin. And the question is if there are another side of your dramatic art which were not yet recognized by the film directors, and you would like to play. Well, maybe it will be helpful for the brothers Coen for the next film. What would you like to play instead of big boy who doesn't know always what's on?
I would like to play a small woman who doesn't know always. As for my dramatic range, I think it's pretty much what you see is what you get.
Okay. Another question here, right hand side. Thank you.
Two questions for John. Could you just say what other characters beside the small woman you would like to play? I mean, what are really the main things you like to do, comedy or drama? And the second question is, you are a mighty Hollywood star, with everything, with everything that involves. If tomorrow a unknown director with a quality project comes to you, but with no money, I mean with little, would you accept it or not? Thank you.
Yeah, of course I'd accept it. If it's as good as you say it's going to be, hell yeah. I don't really, I'm not a very ambitious person. I just kind of take what's thrown at me and, you know, sort it out and choose from there. I've been pretty satisfied over the last few years of things that I've done. I've gone back to the stage 2 years ago. I'd certainly like to do that again. You know, whatever happens, happens. If you plan too many things, you certainly will get disappointed in this life. This one, for one thing, I did a Falstaff a couple of years ago. I'd like to get back and do a little bit more of that.
Okay. We have a question here on the right-hand side.
This is a question about the use of Sam. Could you comment on the use of Sam Elliott, that Sam Elliott character, and particularly for the ending?
Yeah, I'd like to know this one myself.
Yeah, and in fact, Sam kept asking us, what am I doing in this movie, boys? It was kind of difficult. I don't think we ever gave Sam an adequate explanation. He was certainly, you know, that's actually another part that was written specifically for, I mean, that was written specifically for Sam. I think his name, we mentioned his name in the script, in fact. It's, you know, beyond saying that we wanted some kind of narrator who stood completely outside of the story, I really don't know how to explain it.
Okay, there's a question far end right-hand side.
Yeah, this is a question for the Coen brothers. Over here. Some directors want to make movies about deep feelings, deep emotions, but except from making fun of Nazis and making fun of American bowling freaks, what is your object of this movie?
I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Okay, we have another question here.
A question to Mr. Ethan Coen. Going back to my question before, would it be something like a political taboo to do a movie on women losers?
No.
You seem especially interested in our making a movie that parodies women. It's yeah. I think maybe actually we should give that some serious thought.
We have a question on your left-hand side, front.
Thank you. I must admit that this I come from Cyprus anyway. I must admit that this press conference is one of the most enjoyable I've been to. You laugh quite a lot, which is quite nice, and you use quite a lot of laughter in your films to cover uncomfortable situations, at least for us European audience facing the American way of life. Do you think now becoming so established that this will affect your movies, make movies more likable to the establishment? Will you keep on fighting?
Well, it's always a dangerous thing to try and second guess. I think what's going to be more likable or not likable. It's we've certainly not had any success at it. You know, and I guess we will just keep. You know, in that respect, we'll just keep doing what we've been doing because it's dangerous to sort of try and second guess and figure out what's going to be like more or like less.
We have another question here, right-hand side, middle section.
I hope this isn't too awkward a question, but as American filmmakers making films with very specific American themes, are you surprised with the international success and popularity of your films?
Well, to a certain degree, we're surprised that our films are popular anywhere. But it's true that some of our movies have done better in Europe, for instance, than they have in the United States. It's sort of a question of which, you know, a movie to movie, it's different. But again, we'd be sort of hard-pressed to explain why, because you're right, they all do seem to be sort of specifically American in terms of their, well, certainly in terms of their settings, but also to a certain extent in terms of their concerns and the characters and all the rest of it. It's hard for us to sort of conceive of a movie or a story that doesn't take place there. So I know what you mean, but it's difficult to understand for us why a certain movie, again, this gets back to what I was saying before, will do sort of appeal to a certain group and not to another. Some of our movies like Barton Fink and Miller's Crossing, I think, did better in Europe, and others like Raising Arizona and Fargo may have done marginally better in the United States.
We have a question here, sort of left-hand side, middle.
Yeah, I'm wondering, as your films do become more popular and as independents start to move more into the popular marketplace, are you seeing a change in the kind of writing that's coming out of Hollywood? Do you think that, say, you're at the vanguard of a shift in the kinds of original work that's going to come out of the more mainstream film industry?
No, I just, no, in a way I think our work is too marginal to be at the vanguard of anything. You know, it's, we just kind of, you know, play over in our corner of the sandbox and are generally ignored by the rest of the industry, which is sort of the way we like it. So I guess the short answer is no, not really. I mean, I don't see that.
There was a question here, sort of on the somewhere in the middle here. No? Sorry. Any more questions? There's a question there again.
Just a follow-up to what you just said. In some ways, you're breaking the mold in your screenplays and your themes and the way you present stories on film. Do you think that 20, 30, 40 years from now, you really will have set the precedent in the way films are made about contemporary society? And are you conscientious about that?
No. You know, there are a lot of different movies. I mean, different kinds of movies. There's Hollywood movies and all sorts of movies outside the Hollywood system, and they're very... No. I don't see us as being special or especially... No.
All right, we have another question here in the middle section.
Well, but there were very elaborate questions. I don't mean mine, but there were some. In a way, you enjoy to pretend to be naive. Is that right?
No, you know, sometimes, frequently, you give an honest answer, and because it's not what the person was asking the question is after, they think you're being evasive or willfully naive or something of the sort. But
I think it's more the case. It's just a question of perspective in terms of how you look at your the way you look at what your own process or your own what you do, your own work is a specific. You have a specific sort of approach to it, but it's not. And you may not think about it in the terms that, well, journalists often do, and who are coming at it from a totally different place. So the fact that we don't sort of consider it that way, we don't actually spend much time thinking about it that way, often sort of leaves us at a loss in terms of how to analyze it in those terms. And that also can seem sort of naive or coy or evasive, which, it's not intended to be. It's an honest sort of just answer of how it's not the way we approach it or how we sort of look at it ourselves. And the question of sort of trends and influences and that sort of thing, it's also not something we spend a lot of time thinking about. And to the extent that we do, it seems it sort of, any connections or sort of projections about that actually sort of honestly escape us. So.
Okay, we have another question, sort of left-hand side.
Hello. Steve Buscemi did tell me, I thought at one point, that the starting point for this film were the characters played by himself and Peter Stormare.
Yeah, well, Steve would say that.
And how did you decide which strands to go for and which ones to let go? Like, we didn't see Julianne Moore and the baby, for instance, or which ones? I mean, there are so many ways you could have gone, and there were characters like red herrings, and there were others that were going to be pursued. How did you decide which ones to go with, and where did you get the red herrings from? Did they come later, or were they there as an integral part that you were pursuing many lines or whatever?
Red herrings.
No, it's not the case that we wrote the script and then sort of went back and salted it with red herrings, so to speak. No, we do really write in order, and what sort of comes out at the end of that process is pretty much what we shoot. There isn't a lot of sort of major revision afterwards, although of course, like any writers, we go back and rewrite. But no, not with the idea of planting red herrings. I don't know. It's just a sort of taste thing. You sort of pursue the characters who seem more central and let go of the ones who seem more peripheral.
In terms of how the story started, it actually, the characters that the character Jeff Bridges played and the character that John Goodman played, are very loosely based on real people in L.A. That's kind of how the story started. In the case of Jeff, it was a particular person. In the case of John, it was sort of a composite of a number of different people that we were thinking about. And as I said, it was very sort of loosely based on those people. But it was sort of imagining them, those characters and those characters together, and those characters in the context of a kind of Chandler kind of story that got us started on the story.
Okay, we have a question here.
Yes, on Fargo, you had a very lovely promotional device, which was a snow globe with a little tiny sheriff and a body. And I was just wondering if you've come up with anything for The Big Lebowski along those lines. And Mr. Goodman, did you develop your bowling technique on King Ralph?
So you want me to field the last part of that first? No. I was an avid bowler as a child. South St. Louis, it's a mighty thing to do.
And I don't know, there isn't a similar promotional thing, I don't think, for this movie. Although there was.
It's kind of a cube-like deal.
Yeah, the American distributor has I don't know how to describe it. It's not a Rubik's Cube. It's a folding cube with various characters from the movie depicted on it.
There are little bowling pin keychains as well.
I think we have another
And playing
last
cards.
Sorry.
Are they keychains?
Yeah.
I think we take the last question there on the corner there.
Ethan, why you show us sometime the realistic violence and sometime you are laughing about?
Well, I don't know. It's sort of. It's just another. It goes with the movie. It's hopefully consistent with whatever whatever you're doing. In this one, I guess the fight scene at the end is sort of towards the realistic end, in that it's awkward and kind of clumsy. But you know, that's it's consistent with the characters not being larger than life. You know, very sort of life-size drama.
Okay, thank you very much for coming along and spending your time with us, and all the best for your film.